tēnā tātou katoa e te iwi e te whānau, nau mai whakatau mai, nau mai ki tēnei kaupapa kōrero, e kia nei ko te kai a Te Rangatira. He mihi nui tēnei ki ngā tupuna kei wainganui a tātou, ki ngā mate huhua o te wā, no reira me mihi katika ki tō tātou nei kiingi a pōtatau te wherowhero te tuawhetu, taino atu ki te whareariki hoki. No reira pai maarire ki a rātou. Kia koutou te hunga ora, tēnā koutou, nau mai, whakatau mai. Hei timatanga, me tukuna atu tēneki taki mihi, he taki kōrero hoki. I o te pai mana o te piringa tā uki uki, whakatau mai, te ngau angitu, irihia tia Māori, whakatai rangatia te weu, huakina wā o whawha, ue a te tawhito, ai o te hihiri, we te kina te hiato. Manawa mai ai te pūtanga o tēnā ariki, manawa mai ai te pūtanga o tēnā tauira. Ka eke kia rangi e tūiho nei, kia eke kia rangi tā huahua. Ko tēnei te Māori kei ahau. Nā tū te whiwhi ānuku, nā tū te whiwhi ārangi, kei te whiwhi i waho, kei te rawe i waho, huritia mai waho, tāwhia mai waho. Ko tēnei te Māori ka whakapiki, ko tēnei te Māori ka whakakake, ko tēnei te Māori o tēnei tauira, ko tēnei te Māori o tēnei ariki, ko tēnei te Māori o tēnei tāwhakina. Whano, tūmai te toki, au e taukiri.
Taukiri e.
Well, welcome, one and all. Nau mai whakatau mai. Welcome to Te Kai a Te Rangatira. This is our very first podcast, and I am your host. Matu Taira Herangi, and it's a real honour and a privilege to share this podcast with you all, and to have you here with us. Now, before we actually get into this interview, I just want to share with you about the purpose and objective of this podcast as a platform, as a place, a forum to promote and inform you about wānanga rangaranga. Now, wānanga rangaranga is a transformational program that we have created and are now delivering here in the Waikato. And the purpose of Wānanga Rangaranga is to empower whānau to create a future that is full of possibility and wonder. Rangaranga is committed to whānau success in a world where whānau hold the power to choose what life will look like for themselves and for future generations. Our curriculum comes from a Māori worldview and is transferable and relevant across all cultures and backgrounds. In this wānanga, all people and cultures are welcome. So just a little bit about myself before we introduce my co-host and our first guest. Ko taupiri te maunga, ko Waikato te awa, ko pōtatau te tangata, he piko he taniwha Waikato taniwharau, ko tūranga waiwai, ko te kaharoa ngā marae, ko Ngāti Mahuta, ko Ngāti Mahanga, ngā hapu, ko Matu Taira Herangi tōku ingoa. And, before I go on to introduce my co-host, I just want to share with you who I am for Wānanga Rangaranga. My current role with Wānanga Rangaranga is as the leader of the program. I deliver the program, ko au te rangatira. I am the person who weaves the program together throughout the actual 2-day workshop that we deliver. And, this is something that I'm really honoured and privileged to take on, and it's something that I believe has been, passed down to me by my tupuna, by my ancestors. And so, I'm really proud to be a part of this kaupapa and to be making a real difference for whānau and for people in the world, especially in our community. But at this stage, I just want to introduce my co-host this evening, who just happens to be my older sister, Miriaina. And I just hand it over to you, Miriaina, to introduce yourself. Ka pai.
Kia ora matutaira, kia ora mō tō takimihi, mō tō mihi ki ngā tupuna, kia wangenui kia tātou, me tō mihi kia kōrua. Ko wai au, ko taupiri te maunga, ko wai kato te awa, ko tūranga wāwai marae me te kaharoa marae, te ngā marae. Ko Miriaina he rangi ahau. Ko au te tuakana. So who my role within Rangaranga is, without this role, we can't move forward. So ko au te hapai o, ko au te ai o manakitanga. So I am the heartbeat. I am the one that keeps everything moving. I am the ahi ka. I ensure that everybody is safe. I ensure that I am all forms of love. I am the love that challenges. I am the love that corrects. I am the love that is safe. And I am the love that is consistent for all of those who touch and are a part of our rangaranga wānanga and our rangaranga whānau. Who I am for my whānau, again, I would sum that up as the person who keeps everybody on track, the person who keeps everything moving. And I suppose I'm accountable to all of those whānau all of my whānau members. But I'm also expect that they are accountable to me. I'm a demand and there is no separation for me from rangaranga and whānau. I'm a demand that that everyone lives up to or is their most excellent self. And I am also a demand that we live a life of abundance. We don't view ourselves as having anything wrong. There is no deficit. There is only abundance and the ability to thrive and empowering those around me to have that. I suppose who I am for the future is I ensure I make it my purpose in life to ensure that our rangatahi, our tamariki, our mokopuna in generations to come have what they need to develop themselves, to provide a level of leadership, honesty and love for the generations that come behind them. So, ko tērā.
Tēnā koe. Kia ora, Miriaina. Thank you for who you are for us and who you are for Rangaranga, and who you are for our whānau, our community, and for the world. Wano e te whānau, ko te kai a te rangatira he kōrero. It is said that the food of leaders is talk. And it's our intention on this first episode of Te Kai a Te Rangatira to talk about leadership. And so without further ado, I would like to introduce our first guest for this podcast. And this our first guest is the founder of Wānanga Rangaranga. She came up with this whole whakaaro, this whole idea and went about sharing it with us and with others. And, we are looking forward in this podcast to talking about that journey of creating rangaranga, how that happened, where that all came from, and also discovering, leadership and what leadership actually means, what leadership means to us. And, and I think as our listeners, something for you to ponder as well, what actually is leadership, and what does that look like for you? And, for us here at Rangaranga, we're committed to growing leadership. Okay, so really looking forward to this kōrero, and without further ado, I'd like to introduce to you all our first guest for Te Kai a Te Rangatira, Marian Ruri. Tēnā koe, Maz.
Tēnā kōrua.
Awesome.
Where's the drum roll now?
Oh, too much.
Oh, haria. Oh, well. Tēnā tātou. Nei rā te mihi kia koutou, e te whānau, e te iwi, I roto i tēnei wārere ki, ko Waio, ko Marian Ruri tōku ingoa, ko Taupiri te maunga, ko Waikato te awa, ko Waikato te iwi, ko Ngāti Mahuta te hapu, ko Tūranga Waiwai te marae. Awesome to be here with you both. Who am I for rangaranga? Ko Waio te puna manawa. And sometimes I don't know what I'm actually doing in rangaranga. It really is that way sometimes. But there's one thing I am sure of, is that I have a wholehearted belief in what it is that we're up to. And that's really the distinction or the role that Te Puna Manawa is. And some of the whānau listening to this might think, those are some conceptual, airy-fairy titles, man. And you'd be right, they are. But they're that way for a reason. We've named them those things because they don't belong to us. They're not unique to us. Anyone can step into them. But Te Puna Manawa is like this never-ending spring, or, this belief, that wholehearted belief in the kaupapa that we're up to, that we've created. And, that's really, the power of that is that it's what leads to manifestation of something. And so that's what my role is for rangaranga. Yeah.
Kia ora. Tēnā koe e te puna manawa. I love that. I just want to start with a question that we're actually going to start every podcast with. This podcast is all about leadership, and so straight off the bat, I just want to throw this one straight out there. What does it mean to be a leader for you, Maz?
Good question. Geez, you would have thought you would have sent me these answers so I could have practiced them. No, none of that stuff, cuz. Look, quite simply for me, it's it's somebody who has the courage to step into a space where nobody else does, to own a space, to literally to lead something, to be at the front, to put yourself at the front, to put yourself at risk for something bigger than yourself. It's to lead someone or to lead something, and it really takes something to be able to do that. It takes courage, it takes heart, it takes bravery, it takes somebody being bold, it takes somebody being vulnerable and scared and still willing to step in and lead whoever it is or whatever it is that you got to lead. So, that's what leadership is for me. I could describe it, or it's epitomized by so many leaders in my life. I think of all our ariki, or those who have gone, and even our current king, Te Puia. We're surrounded by so many incredible leaders. Our parents, our grandparents,
we're really fortunate where we come from. So, yep, that's what leadership is for me.
Yeah, and I'm, one thing I'm really picking up on, from what you just shared there was courage and bravery. Being able to put yourself out there, and one thing that came up for me when you were sharing that was this, especially here in Aotearoa, New Zealand, the notion of tall poppy syndrome. And, we've grown up with that our whole lives, and what I've noticed is that there's actually a real reluctance for people to put their hands up and say, I'm the leader. I am a leader. I am the leader. This is what I am leading, and here we are today creating this podcast, putting our hands up saying we're leading our whānaus, to a place where they can create the lives they really want for themselves, and I just have to acknowledge that that does take bravery. It's taken a few years to actually get myself to this stage of being able to put my hand up and say, yeah, I'm a rangatira, I'm a rangatira, yeah. And that actually just struggled to get out of my mouth right there when I tried to say it. I was like, oh.
Bit of a stutter.
Yeah, exactly. It choked me up a little bit there, and that's how, that's how reluctant people are to take on leadership. And I suppose that, the next question for me is, how did you get yourself to this space, to leading a bunch of us to create this wānanga?
Yeah, cuz, well, I mean, really, how it culminated in the end, because what's been created in Rangaranga is not a new conversation. So, as a group, we've been talking about this kaupapa for a long time, but it had never kind of moved to anything. And so, we've been doing, everyone knows us, a lot of whānau know us out there. We all been, developing ourselves in leadership and transformational programs. And so I did a transformational program, and it was specifically around teams and the management and leadership of teams as well. And so when I did that particular program, I got to see, so I've been really independent and good at doing stuff myself and accomplished that way, but I could never lead teams. And what I got to see in that program is I was just scared, scared of screwing up, scared of failing, scared of putting myself out there as a leader. And so I got to see that was in the way for me that way. The other thing for me was that really I just got to see how much of what we've created in Rangaranga and what its purpose is needed in this world. And it's something so much bigger than us, right? It's like, when you want to be home, sitting on your couch watching TV, but you got a commitment to something bigger than you, which for us, and well, for me personally, it's about whānau leadership, community leadership, that old school, who's those backyard leaders who actually make a difference in communities, which are sorely missing in this world. And so through this program, got to see, man, I'm a commitment to creating leaders within whānau. Those, transformation through the backyards and across Aotearoa, and that movement of creating those leaders would also be the fulfillment of mana motuhake as well, which is a whole nother kaupapa we're all passionate about as well. And so anyway, I had this realization in this course, and I was just like, I got to see that to drive this kaupapa would take courage and vulnerability. Vulnerability is a very, very powerful way of being for leaders, but we're too scared to be vulnerable. And so I took on, right, I'm going to be courageous and I'm going to be vulnerable. And I'm going to enroll my cousins and some of my mates into creating this Indigenous transformational program for our whānau in service of creating whānau leadership. So basically I came home and, it was a trip over Sydney that I'd been over to do, Sydney or Melbourne. And I came back and I think it was a Monday morning and I called Meriaina Matutaira, my mum, Raukuraroa, Natalie Lulia, and Donnell Hughes, and enrolled you into what this kaupapa is. Thank God you all said yes.
Oh man, yeah. No, thank you for enrolling us, Cuz. I honestly, what I'm actually getting, especially when you talk about vulnerability, right? Vulnerability of leaders is, and I think that's a huge reason why people are reluctant to be leaders is, because there's this idea that leaders are infallible, that we can't get things wrong, that we've got to have it all sorted, we've got to get it all worked out, that we've got to be 100% pure ourselves before we can show anybody else the way,
Oh yeah, it's the biggest load of crock of crap you will ever hear in your life, And I know for me, and there are so many people out there who do it, and I got to check myself before I wreck myself sometimes, because when I pretend that I got it all together, it ain't going nowhere good for nobody, not for me, not for, you got so much to protect when you're trying to pretend to have it all together.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's so much pretense. It's inauthentic, it's fake, it's pretentious, it's all those bloody sort of things. And it's just, I think, that knowing that that actually my access to power as a leader was to be vulnerable, it completely transformed my leadership and took it to a whole nother level. And I'm more of a bloody mess than I ever was before. And yet people are far more willing to do things for me. People are far more enrolled in who I am. I'm way more connected than I've ever been with people. Just that plastic, fake, fantasticness has gone. Slips in sometimes. My brother Leon will remind everyone sometimes, but it don't work for nobody, that thing.
Yeah, no, thanks for that, cousin. Thank you for sharing that. It's definitely something I've discovered within myself too, being vulnerable and and just saying what's there for me and actually saying, when I'm in a position of leadership that, hey man, I'm not sure what to do here. And, and I think what that brings up for me is that a big part of leadership is actually creating others as leaders, and actually having others contribute. I'd formerly had it that, the leaders got to do, they've got to have everything sorted. They've got to know. But what I've come to recognize is, leaders can delegate. Leaders can empower others. Leaders can create accountabilities with others.
Yeah.
And so, that's something that I've come to discover. And, since your enrollment conversation with me about rangaranga, I've also put myself into the same team management and leadership program. And my sister Miriam is joining me in August, or joining us, because you'll be back in for the next round. But I mean, it's vulnerability, the willingness to put yourself out there, creating other leaders, and I think that's what you've really done with Rangaranga. Like you were the one who had the idea in that, but you just gave the reins to others and they ran with it. And I mean, I have to acknowledge Raukura for the amazing mahi that she's done for Wānanga Rangaranga, and actually creating our curriculum and putting her, her doctorate thesis skills to great use in her her work in research and education in creating this program. But one question I have, or another question that I have for you is, in terms of leadership, what or who, should I say, who are some of the leaders in particular that have really inspired you in your lifetime, and who continue to inspire you in this journey of leadership you're on right now?
Yeah, good question, cuz. I mean, there's heaps of them. I've always, kind of been a fan of the Nelson Mandelas and Fidel Castro. I admire a lot, kind of Martin Luther King. But I think, to be honest with you, as I've gotten older and got far more reconnected, with my iwi, or my different iwi. My dad's from Tūhoe, mum from the Waikato. Just gotten present to so much leadership inside of our iwi and our whānau as well. I look at who my mum and dad are for us as leaders now. My mum and dad are polar opposites. Everyone knows that. Mum's, the flamboyant out there, rather opinionated person, but super courageous. My mum is. When she believes in something, then ain't no one budging her. And my dad provides a real quiet leadership. He allows us to, because we can be quite opinionated as a whānau. But my dad allows that. He steps back and he's super proud of who we are, and he lets us say whatever we want. There's that type of leadership. I look at my grandfathers. My grandfather Binga was a leader in Waikato as well, but that didn't come without my grandmother Nuki being behind him and providing that leadership as well. There's my grandparents on my Ruri side, and aunties and uncles, and iwi leaders, the Sir Robert Mahutas of the world, the lady. There's just so many. But it's those quiet backyard leaders that impress me. It's those ones who are, when there's a scrap out on the street and people are too afraid to go, it's the auntie, or the nanny who will go out. I remember the scrap at, where's that, League Park in Huntly?
Davey.
Yeah, that's it.
Fuck.
I remember, I think it was the mobsters and Black Power having a scrap with wasting one another with baseball bats, and this tiny little nanny walks, nobody, big, huge men, everybody too scared to step, and they all stood back and watched who walks up, this little nanny, right into the middle of them, and said, bloody stop it, and cut it out. And you know what? They dropped their baseball bats and the fight broke out. That, to me, is leadership. That's courage. It's that type of stuff. And those types of leaders, they're awe-inspiring for me, man. I love them.
Yeah. Wow. And I think one thing that I really got, from what you just shared there was wahine. We come from a traditionally matriarchal society, as Māori, and we honour and revere the whare tangata, the house of man and the womb from which all people come. And, for me, female leadership has been something that's dominated my life and our people for generations now, for several generations, with Nana Te Puia, and of course the lady and her time, and I think that's really inspired a generation of female leaders that are now at the helm of our tribal organizations. Mm-hmm. And yesterday we just had the Huia Iwi, they had the annual report at Hopu Hopu, and it was just amazing to see those wahine up there presenting Parekawhia, Rukumoana, and Donna.
Yeah.
Just all amazing women who are leading the way for our tribe. And I just really acknowledge and honour our women. Lots of our women are taking on really important roles in our kura and our different schools. Our sporting club at the moment, Cousin Tina is our, the chairperson of our sports and cultural league club, Tūranga Waiwai at the moment. There are a whole bunch of Cheryl Stevens up at the Waikato Tainui College.
Miriaina Herangi.
Yeah, well, there we go. It's this women are stepping up, and one thing for me that I'm really committed to is really empowering our men to really take on, our roles and responsibility as leaders within our whānau, our marae, our hapu, our communities. And and that's one thing I want to bring to this conversation is, where are our men, and what do you see as as what's actually going on there? Why men are reluctant to step up into those roles and into those positions of leadership?
Yeah, well, Cousin Nines might have, no doubt, have something to say about that, Cousin. You have a kōrero, and then I'll share something.
Yeah, I do, as a matter of fact. I think, for us, it's especially here in Waikato, because you can see that the other iwi have a lot more visible male leadership. Ngaitahu, way more visibility with their men in leadership roles within their tribal organisations or their tribal forums. And I think really what's still there for the people or the men of Waikato is that historical trauma they carry since the exile of Kingi Tawhia to Maniapoto. That was really, I think, a significant point in time where the roles of men in the community, in our community, were really, I don't want to say diminished, but that was the beginning of, there was having to go down to Maniapoto or spread ourselves out throughout the rohe of Maniapoto and the Puaha. Our men had no place, because we had to be taken in by our whanaunga, the tuakana down in Maniapoto, the whānau in the Puaha. Therefore, the men in our individual whānaus who went out there, I believe they lost some of their mana by having to ask other men to look after them and their families. There was it took something for them to actually, that vulnerability we speak of, that to actually ask cap in hand to live with their cousins or for their cousins to support them. And I think that's had a huge impact on how our men relate to their boys. Because if it were a thriving community, and if we had the thriving marae still at the point, then there would be, not so much a hierarchy, but everybody knew their place. Everybody had their roles and responsibilities. And men had the ability to take their boys through that rites of passage. And that doesn't happen anymore. And it may happen in other iwis, and I'm not sure, coming from Waikato, this is what we get to see, and this is what we get to experience. I also think, you know, the urban flight that happened in the 60s, 70s and 80s also had a lot to do with it, because it really disconnected our whānau. And so the roles that men had and women had in the urban space were different. You know, it wasn't like you could depend on your whānau. That's why whānau who moved to Auckland created their own whānau and created their own communities. But again, you didn't have that support, and you didn't have that continuation of a process whereby boys became men. They were shown how to step into that place of being a man by their dads, by their koro. And it was all by example. And unfortunately, when mokopuna left to stay home and the parents go to the city to earn the money, you know, there's a real disconnect within whānau. And I truly believe that's it's one of those, you know, traumas that we need to, all of us, all of our young men, our koro, our auntie, our uncles, just need to actually come out and say what it is that's, you know, it's almost like getting it out so it's not in there anymore, so that they can carry on with a different way of being with each other, man to man, boy to man. And there's a lot of healing to do in that particular space. And it's different for women. They don't have to go through those same rites of passage, you know, because it was a way of being that men showed boys how to be. You know, and mainly women got to stay with their mums, with their nannies. But young boys, mokopuna, you know, dad had to go out and work, so dad was away 8 to 12 hours of the day, and they only had their nanny and their mums to be with them, to be the example for them.
Yeah, no, great whakaaro. I really get the disconnection, you know, between the intergenerational trauma and the disconnection, you know, that has occurred and that continues to occur, you know, that is still happening today with you know, current generations. And you know, and I suppose what's there for me is that, you know, rangaranga is about empowering whānau to be able to create the life that they want, and, you know, and creating leadership in those whānau. And you know, how is this something that rangaranga deals with in the wānanga, is, you know, reconnecting ourselves with ourselves with our culture, reconnecting ourselves with our whānau. Yeah, that's one thing, you know.
I mean, when you look at it, at the heart of it, everything is really about connection, interconnection, relationships, interrelationships. And, you know, within Māoridom, within our iwi, you know, the foundation of life is that connection, that relationship you hold with everything, both visible and invisible. So, I mean, again, you go back to that, it's about connection. And so through rangaranga, and we understand that too, and this is where the kaupapa Māori lens comes into it, is that intrinsically we know that everything is connected. You can't not be related to something, whether you like it or not. And so it therefore has an impact on everything too. And so what we deal with is your connection to everything, to people, to whānau, to your workmate, to your partner, your wife, your daughter, your kids, your mokopuna, whoever it is, and whatever it is, we can, through rangaranga, empower you to reconnect or to connect to the things that are most important to you. Whatever that is, that's what it's there for.
Awesome. Yeah. And I think, one of the brilliant things about our tupuna is that they were able to create stories, pūrākau, that really gave us some guidelines about how we are as human beings. And when we think about our creation story and the atua, the relationships between the siblings, between rangi, papa, and their siblings, the relationship between and the evolution of everything that is, coming from te kore and going through those evolutionary processes to, what there is today, and as we continue to evolve towards our full true potential, and I think Rangaranga has done an awesome job at connecting at connecting the past to the present, to the future, and reconnecting ourselves with who we really are, and therefore creating a space where we can be one with our family and work collaboratively and work powerfully to, as we said before, create a life that we love. And for me, that is what mana motuhake looks like, right? We come from a long legacy of leaders who have held up the obligation of hosting and paying host to kingitanga kaupapa, and that at the end of the day is the ultimate objective of kingitanga, is mana motuhake. And for me, mana motuhake looks like whānau and individuals within whānaus creating the lives that they love. And, that for me is really what we're up to at Rangaranga, creating leaders that can go on to help others create for others and with others lives that we love, in whatever realm that may be in: work, sport, play, education, health, and all those areas. And before we wind this first episode up, and as we continue with our episodes, we'll continue to speak into leadership and all the different facets of leadership. I just really want to hand the toko over to you, Marion, just to share anything that you would like to leave our listeners with, anything you'd like to contribute to this kōrero. And we'll hand the toko over to you.
Oh, thanks, Cuz. Look, Rangaranga to me is a magic wand, right? So if anybody came to you in life and said to you, and handed you this magic wand and said to you, with this wand, you can have anything you want for yourself in life. Anything is possible with you holding the power of this wand. That's what Rangaranga is. Now, it's a very, very profound concept, but that is the reality of what we're up to. And that's what we want whānau to know. Anything is possible for you and your whānau by participating in Rangaranga. Anything that you want for you and your whānau, you can get by participating in Rangaranga. You really do have the power to create a life of your dreams, a life for your iwi, for your hapu, for your marae, for your country, for the world, by participating in what it is that we've created. That is the magic and essence of what Rangaranga is. it's a magic wand, a wand of possibility. That's all.
Awesome. Sounds like Harry Potter, cuz. I love it. I love it.
It's magic, cuz.
Oh, beautiful. So there it is, whānau. We encourage you to go and check out our Facebook page, whānau. We are going to be, throwing up our next dates there pretty shortly. I think we've actually got them in existence. And, just recently we've decided to align ourselves with the Maramataka. And, we're going to be making an announcement of when our next wānanga is actually going to be. But you'll find us at Rangaranga Limited. That's the name of our Facebook page, whānau. Just really encourage you to go and check it out and learn a little bit more about what it is, we do as Rangaranga. And join our page. And we'd love to hear from you. If you have any pātai, any questions, just please go along there and ask away. Hit the like, thumbs up like, and you'll be able to find out all about what we're up to and the difference we're out to make, and when you can participate in our next wānanga. We've had 2 already, and we're constantly evolving and developing our curriculum and creating it and learning as we go. And as we mentioned earlier, that's what leadership looks like.
Testing it on ourselves.
Yeah, that's right. We've got to test it out on ourselves.
Yeah.
And just to ensure that it's going to have the desired impact, on our participants, on our kaihoi. And, just want to thank you all for joining us on our first podcast. And, especially want to thank Miriaina and you, Marion, for, just sharing yourselves with us. And really look forward to getting our next participants on our podcast. So I think how we're going to do it is we're going to always have 3 on here, and one of us will drop off, and another one of our rangaranga whānau will come on. And then once we've got through all of our rangaranga whānau, then we'll start casting the net a little bit wider and start inviting other people to come on and have a kōrero and share about who they are and what they're up to and the difference they're out to make in the world for whānau. By the looks of things, next up we have Marion's mum, Auntie Raina, and Marion and I. Just want to, thank you both once again. And, can't say it enough, whānau. Thank you all very much for taking the time to have a listen and a watch of this kōrero. And we look forward to having you join us again on the next episode of Kai a Te Rangatira. Mauri ora kia koutou katoa.
Mauri ora.